Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Let us now consider the application of literary and cultural theory to poetry. Applying literary and cultural theory to poetry makes us introspectively analyze the text by looking inwards into the text itself and also looking outwards to society and culture. This necessary looking outwards from the text is why we have and why we need literary theory. Literary theory can help us in considering four major aspects of the relationship between literature and society. They are: number one, literature and history; number two, literature and language; number three, literature and gender; and number four, literature and psychoanalysis. If we apply this to Sonnet 73 by William Shakespeare, a close reading of the sonnet shows us that the speaker in the poem is clearly not as young anymore as he once was. He declares that he is not going to be alive for very long, so his beloved had better love him well while he is still surviving. The first four lines are vital. At one level, the general meaning is clear. The speaker is old, like a bare tree in the winter. The birds of summer which used to sit upon those boughs and sing have now gone. So it's all very sad and he's feeling very sorry for himself. He wants his lover to feel the same. But the word choirs is like the bullet. It hits. It is the point in the poem where the literal and the metaphorical begin to deconstruct each other. For it isn't just a pretty way of referring to birds. It also literally means the choir stalls in which the monks used to sing vespers, and those choirs are indeed bare and ruined now because the monasteries were closed at the time of Reformation by Henry VIII, and all buildings were abandoned. All this has happened not a very long time ago because the word late means recently, and the metaphor chosen by the poet, the wooden branches, are like wooden choir stalls. This evokes recent and highly contentious history. It is a coded reference, a line in which a secret recusant who may be a closet Catholic signals regret for the suppression of the old Catholic religion. This little poem suddenly seems to be deeply enmeshed in the history of its time. Of course, one can study Renaissance history and find out all about the monasteries, but it isn't just simple. It is not just a matter of acquiring knowledge. If the allusion is actually there, then it teaches us that we do not understand what is a relationship between literature and history. For if at all it is an allusion, it is very difficult to know what is it doing in the poem, what is its use, what is its effect in the poem. Baffling yet fascinating questions of this kind are one of the reasons for using literary theory to appreciate poetry and build up the linguistic repertoire. Here then is a whole area which seems much in need of discussion in broad theoretical terms, and this is a gap in our understanding which can be filled in through literature and its resulting language. Turning now to literature and language brings us back to that peculiar second line and the peculiar order in which the words occur. Shakespeare says, "Yellow leaves, or none, or few do hang." This seems to violate the natural vocabulary order which would follow the logic of a phrase where a process of gradual diminishing is followed through until there is nothing left at all. So it seems that what is happening is that underneath the main current of the language, another current is running in the opposite direction. The speaker is saying that he is past it, but then hints that he isn't maybe quite past it. And this is indicated by the unexpected order of the words. This underlying countercurrent of language can often be sensed. Language seems to have a natural tendency to undermine and contradict itself, to be one thing on the surface and another beneath. That second phrase says one thing, but of course means something else. Deconstructive reading is a kind of browsing tool which is designed to pick up that countercurrent which runs beneath the linguistic surface. In the first line, the speaker says, "That time of year thou mayest in me behold." There is a hint of optionality. We might behold in him. There is a possibility. So he is saying, well, you could and I might, but I still haven't. This notion of undercurrents and cross currents of language then opens up another area where we seem to need theory. This is the area of the investigation of the relationship between literature and language, and the often strange characteristics of language itself. So therefore, when we talk about literary theory and we talk about language, we talk about teaching language through literature, especially poetry, in a classroom so that we can understand the final area of the relationship between literature and language. The strategy may be called preemptive. The strategy may be called suggestive. The strategy may also be called figurative, but the strategy will definitely be very, very effective. In conclusion, I would like to say that one of the central ideas behind the teaching of poetry lies in its ability to bring a fresh sense of life to language. It communicates through sound as well as sight and works its magic by tone as well as by engaging the eye with the movements of the words moving along the currents of the written line. Poetry then can be taught as, I quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling generated by emotion recollected in tranquility. Or it can be viewed as a craft, a formal structure of text, and be taught in a way that leaves it open to the myriad reader responses that it may generate. In both cases, the language is enriched and invigorated by associations, memories, ideas, and it rejuvenates the mind of the students if effectively taught. So to teach language through poetry, we must learn to appreciate and understand poetry and develop a love for the poem as a linguistic unit also in the hearts and minds of our students.
This has been a very thoughtful articulation of teaching English through appreciation and analysis of poetry. Upon completion of this module, the teachers of poetry in English will be able to develop several aids and strategies to make their teaching more effective to enable their students to achieve the following learning outcomes, I guess, which you have really very nicely talked about in the module. I would like to talk about them. You have very clearly summed up how to understand and analyze poetry from multiple standpoints of society, history, and culture. Appreciation of poetry as literary genre. Analyze the various elements of poetry. Identify and explain the diverse genre and style of poetry. Understand the patterns and rhythms, metrics of poetry. Apply the principles of literary criticism to the analysis of poetic forms and styles and genres. enhance the writing skill of students through the use of poetic models. I guess this is what in all which I found that you have taught about.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful summation and appreciation. In conclusion, I wish to say that the road ahead for English language teachers is definitely rough and rocky, but not impossible, and they still have lots to achieve. In this regard, I would like to end by quoting a poet that both you and I share as a common favorite, Robert Frost.
Yes.
The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
This quote signifies many things.
And it applies to all of us.
Very true. So friends, I guess this applies to all of us, as ma'am rightly said. Think about it, try to comprehend it, and try to make our journey. I'm not saying my journey or ma'am's journey or your journey. I'm saying our journey as a teacher, fruitful one. The day we will think about what we have done during our career, we will get reminded of many such incidents. Well, we tried to motivate many students. We tried to look at, there are many opportunities where we would have slipped our path, but we always kept our eyes on the path. And this poem gets us reminded of this, and we tried our best to help the students to become better citizens for India. After all, the goal of learning and teaching, whether it is poetry or prose, whether it is language or literature, the end goal is to produce better citizens for the country. So let us together try our best to help our students to become better citizens for the country. I would like to thank Madam for sharing such a nice module on teaching poetry. I would like to thank her on behalf of UGC Human Resource Development Center of Gujarat University, Ahmedabad, on behalf of MHRD's, that is Ministry of Human Resource Development's National Resource Center of Gujarat University on English language teaching. How can I forget you, friends? Yes, I'm sharing my gratitudes towards ma'am on behalf of all the participants and whole team of Arpit. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.